Tonight on the bench I've got something pretty cool. This is a Tektronix type TU-75B power test set. I was looking for a better dim bulb tester and variac solution for the bench. Right now I have a standard variac combined with a homemade dim bulb tester over here to the right. But one of the things I wanted was the ability to have more than one bulb in the circuit for testing devices that draw more power. Right now I have to switch the bulb out. I have a whole collection of bulbs, and that just adds time, and I potentially could break a bulb. So I came across this, which is essentially a combination of a variac, which is 7 amps, along with a 3-socket dim bulb tester, all in one package. I never knew that a company made these, and as far as I knew, all the dim bulb testers that were out there were home brew. So I was pretty excited to find out that Tektronix made one of these in a really nice package. So my understanding is that the history of this was that Tektronix built this and only used it internally. I don't think they sold it to any other customers. And according to Tech Wiki, it was used in the final QA testing of the scopes as they came off the assembly line. They would, use the current limiting function of the bulbs to ensure that there were no shorts or other issues with the device, and then they would also use the variac portion of it during the calibration, since some of the calibrations call for varying the voltage between, say, 105 and 125. So they did that, and they combined that with a couple nice analog meters and switches here, and this is what we got. You can see it's in the standard 1960s Tektronix blue paint with the pull-off sides, kind of similar to my 575 curve tracer. So in this video we'll go over some of the documentation that's available for it. There's a schematic and there's a drawing of the custom transformer they have inside for the watt meter, and I'll also open it up and give you a peek inside. Here's a closer look at the front of the device. First, you've got your main power switch here in the bottom right. You've got the knob for your variac, and that variac goes from 0 to 140 volts. There's your power lamp showing that it's on. Down here, both of these outlets are actually the same. They're wired together internally, so they both are affected by the variac and the bulbs. It's not like one of them is just straight line voltage or anything like that. Up here we have our watt meter. Now this watt meter actually has 4 connections on the back, 2 for voltage and 2 for current, and it comes up with the reading on the fly. There's a custom transformer scaling that down so that it doesn't exceed the power rating of this, which is 150 watts. So this knob is the watt meter multiplier. It's defaulted to 20x. There's actually a spring in there, so it always goes back to 20x, which I actually didn't know when I bought this, and I find it kind of annoying, but it has to be there to protect the meter. So if I want to go to 1, you got to hold it at 1, and as soon as you let go, it springs back. The other thing is that these indications aren't really in the exact right location, and you can't change the knob position because of the way the shaft is, but those are just a little quirk there. And then to the right we've got our voltmeter, which you can switch between the output reading or the line reading. This is normally on the output, and if you want to go to line, you've got to hold it because it'll spring back to output. And one other note about the watt meter is the schematic calls out that this thing springs back to the 20x position, but on several other TU-75Bs I've looked at, it looks like the spring's been removed. I guess other people found that annoying as well. One guy's actually has a bunch of fuses inside to protect the meter, it looks like, while the thing is just held in a certain position. So in a way, I'd like to modify this to make the watt meter more useful, but at the same time, the thing is just in such perfect shape, I would really hate to hack it up. Alright, and then up top here, we've got our switches for engaging the dim bulb current limiters. So the first one is 1 or direct, and the number 1 bulb is on the left side of the unit. I currently have a 40 watt in position number 1. It had a 250 watt photo flood bulb in position 1 from the factory. Okay, and the other thing to note is if you want the current limiting effect, you have to switch number 1 on. Unfortunately, you can't switch just number 2 or 3 on. And then you've got number 2 and 3. So number 2 and 3, they're on the right side of the unit. Those were both shipped as 500 watt photo flood bulbs. I changed number 2 out to a 60 watt, and I changed number 3 to a 200 watt. So the nice thing is, although you need to have number 1 on for any sort of current limiting, number 2 and 3 can be switched independently once number 1 is on. So I can either have a 40, a 100, a 300, or a 240 watt bulb limiter with the way this is set up. As far as the back of the unit goes, not much to see. It's got your standard extension cord style receptacle that was common on some of the Tektronix gear from this era, and it's got a 10 amp slow blow fuse in there. Unfortunately, this unit didn't come with the power cord. You can't fit a regular power cord in there because there's usually a little tab on one end of it that prevents you from inserting it. So what I like to do is I buy these C14 to 5-15R adapter cables, and you gotta trim a little bit of plastic off of the 515R end of it, but it'll fit right in there nice and snug. And then you can just use a regular C13 computer power cord to power the unit. Alright, let's take a look inside. Alright, so to open this up, it's the same as a lot of other tech gear from this era. You've got these 2 screws here, you give them about a half turn, and then the side just comes off and lifts up. And here's the inside. So we've got our bulb socket number 1 back here. That's got the 40 watt appliance bulb in it right now. Below that is this transformer that's used to scale the watt meter, since the watt meter I believe is limited to 2 amps. At first I thought this transformer may have been something that Tektronix repurposed from another instrument or device, but after looking at the drawing for the transformer, it looks like it was specifically wound just for this thing, which is pretty cool. On the other side, we've got better view of the switches for the bulbs. There's our watt meter with the 4 terminals on it for voltage and current. Here is the selector for the watt meter multiplier below that. I'm not sure what this is called. It's some sort of high power selector switch or resistor, it looks like. I gotta do some more research on that, but you can see that the spring is soldered on there, so if I did want to change this, I could probably just remove that spring and be careful. Power indicator light, which just uses a standard neon bulb, and one of the outlets. Spin it around to the other side here and take a look. This panel removes the same way. There we go. And so on the bottom would be bulb number 2, which is a 60 watt. Above that is bulb number 3, which I currently have a 200 watt in there. Okay, let's move the camera. And over here we've got our voltmeter. You can see some more of the switches. The voltmeter selector, power switch, and our other outlet. And really not much to it. It's a pretty simple device. It just happens to be packaged in a really nice box. Alright, let's do a little demo here. So for the purpose of the video, I put a 100 watt bulb in as the device under test, so we can see how that's affected by flipping the various switches. The variac set to 120 volts. We'll just leave it at that throughout this. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and set these all to direct. We'll turn this on, the bulb will light up full, and if we go over here to the watt meter, let's see if I can get this in the view, and if I set it to the X1 multiplier, it should be at about 100. Alright, so with 120 volts, this 100 watt bulb is pulling exactly 100 watts, just like we'd expect. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll start flipping on the bulbs. I'll start with number 1. This is the 40 watt bulb. So you can see the 40 watt bulb lit up completely because it's taken up all the current since it basically sees this 100 watt bulb as a short. I'll go ahead and switch on bulb number 2. It's 60 watts. So we've got 100 watts in the dim bulb tester acting as the current limiter. That allows the 100 watt bulb to light up, but you'll see that the 100 watt bulb is being limited to about 50 volts, and if we set our watt meter multiplier back to 1, It's only putting out about 45 watts right now, if that, or sorry, 25 watts. Alright, and then we'll go ahead and switch on bulb number 3. So that should allow that 100 watt bulb to almost see full line voltage. Looks like we're at about 100 volts. And if I set the watt meter multiplier to 1, let that settle, we're putting out about 82 watts. Now if I switch this to direct, the bulb lights up to its full 100 watts once again. Now one thing that people didn't like about this when I posted it online, say hey check this thing out, was the fact that you can't see the bulbs inside. What I've seen is with the way I've got it positioned on the bench, which is over in the corner there, it's not really a problem. I'll put one of the sides back on so you can see what I'm saying. Alright, so I've got the side back on, switch this back on, put the 40 watt bulb back in action, and you can see it light up pretty good, even with all the lights on in the room. But the other thing is, I honestly feel like having this voltmeter for the device under test is more useful than seeing the bulb, because you see that needle swing downward quickly if you're working on something that's having a short. So that's it for the tour of this thing. Let's take a look at the schematic and the transformer drawing. Well, I wouldn't exactly call this a manual, but there's at least some documentation out there on this device. It's more or less a parts list and a schematic. So here's the exploded mechanical view of the tester. That's several pages of the parts that were used. Alright, and here's our schematic. See your line here on the back, power switch, the pilot light, this is the variac right there, this is the watt meter multiplier transformer, there's the watt meter, the voltmeter, there's your outlets, your output receptacles, and here's the switching for the bulbs. Not much to see, it's pretty basic. And this was pretty cool. There was a guy on Facebook that shared this in the Vintage Electronics Test Equipment group. This actually isn't on TechWiki. I need to upload it there. But this is the drawing from the transformer that was custom designed for this unit. So there's our secondary that goes to the meter. And there's all the primaries that are connected with your load. Well, that's all I got. Any questions, post them in the comments below. And if you're looking for one of these yourselves, good luck. They're a pretty cool device.